Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. The NBA season is here. We've had actual games be played. I've watched a lot of them. I know you have too, Sap. And we've got some reactions for you. But first, Sap, it wouldn't be a podcast, an NBA podcast, without Ben Simmons watch, because that continues to be the story dominating the NBA. Well, him and Kyrie Irving. And the latest with Ben Simmons is his back hurts and he doesn't feel mentally ready to play. So, this isn't surprising, Sap, but what do you make of the latest in terms of this Ben Simmons ongoing saga with the 76ers?
Well, this is the old expression, shit or get off the pot. At some point, Ben Simmons and his representatives are going to have to do this, and the Philadelphia 76ers are going to have to do this. Now, the best way to up his value is to at least see him play. I mean, James Harden last year was going through something that was somewhat similar, and he played some. And even though he looked to be 250 pounds, maybe even more, not quite at Zion Williamson's level, but looked to be out of shape, you could still see that the guy could still play it. And no one ever doubted whether James Harden wanted to play basketball or not. Whether you like James Harden or not, he is a baller. I kind of put him in the same vein as like Paul Pierce. They'll be 45 years old, still playing pickup basketball. They just love the game. We
The
don't
game
know that about Ben
translates well
Simmons.
to age for James
It
Harden,
does,
right?
yeah, because non-athletic, really, like kind of like Paul Pierce. Like Russell Westbrook's not going to age well. He's athletic. James Harden could probably be 38 and still figure out a way to get to the free throw line and make really nice passes and hit three-pointers. So it's a totally different thing. So we don't know that. In fact, I doubt that about Ben Simmons, whether he loves basketball or not. Maybe he likes the trappings of, having a $17 million mansion in Southern California. Now he's put his $5 million mansion in New Jersey, which is about 45 minutes away from the 76ers facility. He put that on the market. So he wants out. This is obvious. He wants out. So it's time for everybody to just sit down and get this thing hammered out and try to get as much back in return as you can for Ben Simmons, because it appears the team's moved on. At least the players have moved on. We understand that, they had a team meal and everybody's on board that they're going to just, plow through and get ready and try to contend this season. And it appears to me that Joel Embiid's taking more of a leadership role. He joined his teammates. He hasn't always been that guy. And, Tyrese Maxey, start him at point guard. He looks like a guy that can play, right? And go from there and just get the most you can in return for Ben Simmons. If you can get a player or two in return, that's what you do, because the 76ers don't need draft picks at this point. They're in a championship mode. So try to find a team that wants Ben Simmons and find a team that has contracts that match, and you get some veteran players in here and you go after it, because that's the only thing I think they can do.
They're in absolutely just take whatever you can get is the mode they need to be in right now. Stop holding out hope that Dame Lillard's going to shake loose or Bradley Beal's going to shake loose, because those guys aren't attainable for Ben Simmons. Get a couple of guys who you think can or have, good basketball or positional fits with you that may not be star players or all-star players, but will be good, solid, veteran additions to the team, role players that can help you. Because right now, Ben Simmons is a distraction and a net negative. His presence on the roster, even though he's not playing, is a net negative. So, cleansing the Ben Simmons stink and all of that stuff, and having this, because these guys are still getting asked questions about it every day, Sap. Right. When they do their media availability, Doc Rivers is getting asked questions about it. Joel Embiid is getting asked questions about it. Tobias Harris, all these guys. I mean, that's what the reporters want to know. They're doing their jobs. That's the questions everybody wants to know the answers for too. So once he's gone, the questions stop and you can just focus on the basketball end of things. And so, I think the Sixers did whatever they could to try to, say, hey, he's still a really valuable piece. We want a star player back in return, but that ship has sailed. Other teams successfully called Philadelphia's bluff. They need to just find somebody that's willing to, one, take him on, and two, has some veteran pieces that you think can help the team. You're not going to get a star to play with Joel Embiid at this point for Ben Simmons. It's not going to happen. Take some good pieces and try to just move on from the Ben Simmons thing. The ship has sailed of him being able to help contribute to the Sixers, or him being able to have enough value to be able to get you somebody that is of equivalent value for him. So that's over with. Time to just move on. It'd be best for all parties now if they hammer this thing out in the next couple of days.
So the whole offseason was dominated by Kyrie Irving with the Brooklyn Nets and Ben Simmons with the Philadelphia 76ers. what's going on in Brooklyn at least is stabilized, right? Like Kyrie's not going to play till he gets vaccinated, and the Nets have put their foot down and said, all or nothing. And so that's kind of resolved at this moment until Kyrie decides he wants to get vaccinated. So that's kind of
Right.
stable, which sounds kind of crazy. In
Well, and they have the
Philadelphia, there's
backbone
no
of two star
stability.
players, Sap.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
a nice way to
Well,
stabilize
the
things.
76ers have the backbone of Joel Embiid, who
Right.
despises Ben Simmons. Like, I think Kyrie is liked by his teammates. They kind of maybe now look at him and say, well, this guy's a little bit kooky, but we still basically like him.
Right.
I get the feeling in that 76ers locker room that they don't like Ben Simmons. They hate him, in fact.
Well,
in fact,
at this
Joel
point,
Embiid has
Sap,
pretty much said as much.
he's just making shit up, right? He's saying, I'm not
Right. His
mentally ready to
back
play.
hurts.
My back hurts. I came into close contact with somebody who would go. He's making stuff up right now to not be there, but he still wants to collect his money. So Kyrie, is still well liked. God knows why, but he is. But Ben Simmons, and I said this, Sap, the other day when we did the podcast, whatever team they do trade him to, I feel like you have to talk to the players about it. I don't know if he's well liked amongst anybody in the league, and certainly he's not endearing himself to any players in the league and being like, oh yeah, this is a guy I really want to play with. I mean,
yeah, like at least with James Harden last year, you're like, oh yeah, go get James Harden. The guy can play. He's a baller, right? Like I remember we were talking last year, should the Celtics be in on that? Hell yeah. James Harden's one of the 7 or 8 best players in the world. Go get him. We know when he shows up, he's going to be really good. And he was really good last year with Brooklyn, right? There was a moment in time where James Harden may have been the MVP of the league. He got hurt, wasn't able to really contribute in the postseason, and the Nets didn't go as far as they expected. But that's a totally different thing. I think there was one place, and again, I put forth the Kyrie for Ben Simmons trade. It's not going to happen, obviously. It's way too risky for both teams. How does this sound? Ben Simmons has talked about he wants to play in California. The most famous team in California is who? The Los Angeles Lakers, right? He's close with LeBron James, right? He's represented by Rich Paul, who we know is very close with LeBron James, Clutch Sports. What about Ben Simmons for Russell Westbrook? And then you obviously have to work in some other pieces in there so the contracts match, and maybe the Lakers, who have 27 guys on their roster, can add pieces to Russell Westbrook. Because here's the thing. Ben Simmons can't play in Philadelphia. He just can't play in Philadelphia. That's not going to work. That is the worst place for a guy like that to try to connect with the fans. They despise him. Like, look at the athletes that have been so popular in Philadelphia.
Yeah, he'd get booed if he was putting on their own jersey. He'd get booed.
He's going to be booed. He's going to be booed until he leaves. Right.
Yep.
Who do Philadelphia fans love? Allen Iverson, who just left it all out on the court, balls to the wall, right? They loved Moses Malone, Dr. J. Lenny Dykstra in baseball, as crazy as he is, he bust his ass on the baseball field. Same thing with Pete Rose. They love the Philadelphia Flyers, the old Broad Street Bullies who won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the 70s. They love those types of players, right? That's who Brian Dawkins with the Eagles. He's probably the most popular Eagle of the last 30 years. They love guys like that. They don't like Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, though, can kind of blend in LA because, first of all, there's a million stars in LA, not just athletes, but movie stars and rappers and entertainers. He could just kind of get lost in LA. Could it happen? It would probably be a horrible thing for the Lakers to do to trade Russell Westbrook. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but at some point after you brought him in, because I don't think that's going to work. I don't think Russell Westbrook with the Lakers is going to work. I said that at the moment the trade was made. I don't think it's going to work. Ben Simmons would work in LA on the court. I think he'd fit in perfectly with them. And maybe that's the solution. And then Russell Westbrook, who we know is butted heads with Joel Embiid, but I think they could play together because Westbrook would be loved in Philadelphia, right? Because he's the modern day Allen Iverson in terms of just leaving it all out on the court. Well, his favorite player growing up was Allen Iverson, and Iverson's favorite player in the league is who? Russell Westbrook. It is. They love each other. So, I mean, I think you could bring Iverson in and he could sell it to the fan base and go, this guy is just like me. He's going to go out there and play crazy. Maybe not be efficient, but maybe that could work. I don't know. Maybe that leads to another column.
Why would Simmons work in LA when Westbrook doesn't?
Well, because
their weaknesses are the same, right?
They can't shoot, right? But Simmons is an electric defensive player. He's a playmaker. He's a better playmaker.
Westbrook's a very good defensive player too.
You think? I don't.
He's a good defensive. He's fine.
I don't. I think he's okay. I mean, when they put him and Rajon Rondo on the court together, it's a disaster. I mean, neither one really wants to defend and neither can shoot. It's like playing 3-on-5. But I mean, Simmons is an elite defensive player. I mean, if you have Simmons and Anthony Davis on the court together with LeBron James, I mean, good luck with that. That's as good a defense as you'll ever see. He, I think, could fit in the fact that he now is the third guy on a team and he's got LeBron taking care of everything else that Ben Simmons doesn't even have to speak to the media. We know he idolizes LeBron. He's a really good playmaker. I think he's a better playmaker than Westbrook. I know Westbrook's led the league in assists, 4 times, but he's also led the league in turnovers 4 times. I think he would fit in perfectly in LA. That's kind of where he wants to play. Look, every NBA player seems to have a mansion in Southern California, so he's not unique in that sense. But I think it could work there. And would Westbrook work in Philadelphia? I think the fans would love him. I don't know if that would make them title contenders because I don't know. Westbrook's game to me looks like it's just deteriorated, and Westbrook's probably best served playing on a non-contender, putting up his triple doubles. Like it's almost like he's a sideshow, right? I don't know how he's going to.
I don't think that's what he wants, though. I think he cares more about winning than the numbers at this point in his career.
I would hope so, because that's the only thing missing, right? Is the championship.
Right. Here's why it's an interesting idea, Seth, for sure. Here's why the 2 reasons I don't think it'll work or happen.
It probably won't happen. I mean, it's too crazy to happen, but it is the NBA, Jet. Anything can happen.
Yeah. The first being that I don't think the Sixers are, they're not going to get good value for Simmons. That's over with. But I don't think they're willing to take on a bad contract plus the age of Russell Westbrook just to, say, okay, we're bringing in a guy who's an all-star, former MVP. It's the contract's horrible with Westbrook. It's really, really bad.
I think he has 2 years left, right? 2 years left, and Simmons has 4 years left. So
in addition to that, it would be a really bad look for the Lakers to have brought in Westbrook and he's a very well-respected veteran in the league and then just ship him out of town, out of his hometown after, all this like welcome home Russ and stuff like that. That could damage the brand. We saw the damage that it did to the Celtics organization with Isaiah Thomas when they shipped him out of town. That's, if you take Anthony Davis's father at face value, that's why he didn't want to come to the Celtics. That sort of stuff has ripple effects through the league. So
the Lakers won't have that. The Lakers won't have that to deal with because everyone wants to go to LA. I think that's an excuse to say I don't want to play in Boston because they got rid of Isaiah Thomas.
Probably.
In LA, it's like the Lakers are fucked up more than any organization in modern history, but they always have a way of bouncing back because they're the Lakers. They can go buy a player, trade for a player, and when the best players decide they want to play there, they're on their way to win championships.
I think if we're talking about the most likely California team he goes to, I think it's the Kings. Which is probably the least of his desired play locales. The Kings have too many point guards as it is. They could move one to shooting guard. I mean, they have young players who are intriguing. At least seems like they're not interested in playing Marvin Bagley. Maybe he's a good fit next to Joel Embiid. I don't know, but he's got the bottom line. Sap is they have to make this move quickly because it doesn't help the Sixers to hold on to him and hope for better value because he's clearly not going to play for them. And so you're not going to see any flashes of him on the court. And why would we believe that the things that lowered his value in the postseason, his lack of shooting ability, his lack of free throw shooting ability, his flat out refusal to go, try to take shots. If you even were to play, why would we expect that to be any different at this point? So, the things that teams would be looking to see and saying, okay, yeah, we'll take a shot on Ben Simmons. They're not going to have the opportunity to see that. They're going to have to trade him. And the last game he's going to have played for them is that the game against the Hawks where the lasting image of him is passing the ball from underneath the basket.
Right.
So, it is what it is at this point. They're going to have to take a quarter on the dollar. And honestly, that they'd be best served to just rip the Band-Aid off and do it at this point.
Well, do you think Sacramento? I don't think they're going to trade De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons,
right?
No.
No.
I would take De'Aaron Fox over Ben Simmons right now. At least we know he's reliable. He's going to show up. He's going to play his ass off, and he's a borderline all-star caliber player. I mean, so yeah, if you're looking at that, I know you've mentioned San Antonio quite a bit. That maybe he goes to San Antonio, low-key organization.
That's where I always thought because I think Popovich likes him, and I think that he would fit well in that market. And San Antonio has a bunch of solid veteran players who could fit there, who are in either right before their primes or in their primes. I think that there are pieces that can help Philadelphia win now. None of them are very sexy players, but solid. And so, listen, all you're looking for Philadelphia is get on base. If you want to use a cross sport analogy, right? Hit a single with this trade. You're not going to hit a home run.
Yeah, keep the inning going. And when you look at that, now you can look at the model of the Milwaukee Bucks, right? So Joel Embiid can be their Giannis. Giannis is a better player than Joel Embiid because he's more durable. That's the big difference. But when
he can be the best player in a championship team.
Absolutely.
I think we both agree with that.
No question about that. And then who's Milwaukee's second best player? It's Middleton. The third best player is Holiday. So Philadelphia has guys that are somewhat comparable to that. Like Tobias Harris is a nice player. I think Tyrese Maxey is going to be. I think he's going to be a player you're going to love. I think he's got some of the Kyle Lowry type game to him. He's got an edge. He plays defense. I think he could be a starting point guard on a championship team. And then you fill in. You've got other veterans. You got Seth Curry who can obviously light it up. You've got Danny.
No, they have a solid roster.
Right. So you add a couple more guys like that. Now you kind of look a little bit like Milwaukee. You've got the Hall of Fame player, the stud, and then other guys that kind of fit in. So the big three doesn't necessarily have to be three all-time greats. It can be an all-time great with two guys that really fit in. And we saw that with Middleton and with Middleton and Holiday. I always forget his name for some reason. That's probably a compliment. He's such a good player. But you know what I'm saying? So you don't need, like, the Nets have a big three when Kyrie decides to show up. That's like a ridiculous big three, but maybe that doesn't work as good because, whatever the reason may be. So yeah, I mean, I think Simmons has to go. They have to do something, and they should do it sooner rather than later. I know now what happens is now you get into a pissing contest, right? Like, he's not going to give in, and Daryl Morey's not going to give in, and Doc Rivers is in the middle of this, have to answer the questions about Ben Simmons every freaking day. And the players, and you know what? Joel Embiid doesn't help matters, and I love Joel Embiid. I think he's one of the best personalities in the NBA. He doesn't help matters because he's so truthful. I love that about him, but he's not helping the organization by being that truthful. You get what I'm saying?
Because they're just continuing to plummet the trade value. It's over at this point, though, Seth. There's no recovering the trade value.
Embiid to come out and say, who the hell would want Ben Simmons? And, Daryl Morey and the rest of the front office going, oh, Joel, we love you, but please, you're not helping matters here. Yeah, so that's where they're at now. They have to do something along those lines. Most likely he goes to the Western Conference. And, yeah, San Antonio makes some sense. The Lakers would be, a wild trade.
Don't you think he'd feel a lot of pressure there too, though, Sep? I mean, they're trying to win a championship. LeBron James is on the team.
But LeBron James takes care of a lot of that stuff. Like, you could fit in, like, Anthony Davis is the number 2 guy on the Lakers. Ben Simmons could be the number 3 guy and fill the role.
They'd be hated if Ben Simmons goes.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, LeBron's never comfortable with that. He's not Jordan or Kobe, who were very comfortable being the men in the black hat. LeBron wants to be loved, kind of like Magic Johnson was. But he did win 2 championships in Miami in a 4-year period when he was hated. So I think he can kind of work through that. Now, that was 10 years ago when he was younger. But man, that would be an all-time great defensive team, wouldn't it? I mean, you had Simmons and Anthony Davis with their length and ability, and LeBron when he's engaged defensively. Holy crap. I mean, good luck getting to the basket against those guys. But yeah, I mean, this is all speculation, but something has to happen with this guy. Because you can't keep going on like this, because it's only going to cripple the organization. And they've got a team that, if they can add a couple of pieces by trading Ben Simmons, they're right there with Milwaukee and Brooklyn, and maybe Miami is the 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference, because you have a dominant player in Joel Embiid.
Yeah, and Tobias Harris is a borderline all-star. I mean, him and Middleton are pretty equivalent. I mean, Middleton's a little bit better, but it's not like by, a head and shoulders better. So no, they're not that far away. If they get 2 solid players for Ben Simmons, they could win the East if Embiid stays healthy. It's just like they need to just get it over with. Their dream of Damian Lillard died long ago.
Yep. And Bradley Beal as well. So just move on from that. Yeah, I mean, and go from there. So we'll see what happens. It could be San Antonio, it could be Sacramento. I've always going to keep Golden State in the discussion, because I think, look, when Klay Thompson
didn't look like they needed him on opening night, Sap.
No, the Lakers kind of helped that out. The Lakers looked like dog shit on opening night. I mean, that was just, I mean, and their 2 best players looked great to me. I thought LeBron looked great and Anthony Davis looked great, and everybody else sucked. I mean, they could have put me, you, and your next door neighbor out there, and we would have done better than what, Rondo and Howard and Westbrook and the rest of them, Carmelo. I mean, they just looked god awful. It looked like LeBron, Anthony Davis, and
Well,
the Isle of Misfit Toys.
they looked what people have been calling them, which is old, right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
what those guys, the other guys look like.
Yeah.
LeBron didn't
Yeah.
look old. I mean,
No,
he
he
put up
looked fine.
his patented 34, 5, and 11. This is the problem I texted you about during the game. Just so now we're gonna move into the reaction part of the show. We're talking about what's
Right.
actually
Of actual
happened.
games, right.
Yeah, the actual games. The free throw shooting might be a
Mm,
problem for the
mm,
Lakers. They were 9 of 19, Sap, 47%. LeBron, 3 of 6. Still, I mean, 50% is not good enough for him.
terrible.
Anthony Davis, who's pretty good at the line, 2 of 7. Not good free throw shooting. And that we saw can come back to haunt you in the playoffs. It really can.
Yeah.
And this is a team that you're looking at it. They're going to potentially be in some tight games, Sap. And
Mhm.
free throw shooting is the difference in tight games. I'm saying they're going to be in tight games because they're not going to want to play LeBron and Anthony Davis huge minutes every night. So
No.
presumably the games will be closer. But the free throw shooting needs to improve for them. I agree with you that Davis looked phenomenal. LeBron looked phenomenal. I'm assuming Westbrook will look better than what he did, which was he was trash. And as was pretty much everybody besides like those two guys I just mentioned. So you can't expect that every night. But do you look at this game on opening night and say, hey, the Warriors were pretty impressive, maybe better than I thought, or the Lakers just are going to be a slow starter because they have so many pieces to integrate?
I've felt the Lakers are going to get off to a slow start all year. I think it'll start to really mesh by the time we get to Christmas, which is 2 months away. So the first 2 months is going to be rocky for the Lakers. And look, LeBron and Anthony Davis were outstanding, but you bring up a great point when your two best players who are, I think the greatest player in the history of the sport and another guy who's going to make the NBA's 75th anniversary team and is one of the 6 or 7 best players in the sport right now, combined to go 5 of 13 from the free throw line. I mean,
Yeah.
that's Will Chamberlain shot better from the free throw line. Bill Russell shot better from the free throw line. It's pretty much at the same level as Ben Simmons last year in the postseason. He shot 34% last year in the postseason. So LeBron and Anthony Davis were at 38%. Big difference, huh? So that's a real problem. And the problem is in not just missing the free throws, it changes their game. So now LeBron is just taking threes. He took 11 threes the other night. I know he hit nearly 50% of them.
Yeah.
Great. But I don't want him taking 11 threes. I mean,
But that's an anomaly. He's not gonna shoot
I don't know.
50% from three.
No, he's not going to shoot 50% from threes, but he's going to chuck up 11 of them every night. To me, I don't know that. I don't
He
even know
must
what
have
to
been watching
compare it
some
to.
Marcus Smart highlights in the
Right? Yeah. I
office.
mean, imagine those guys together. They'd be chucking up threes all over the place. I mean, like LeBron can take threes and he can hit them, and I like when he hits them in big moments and the daggers and all that. But I still like him going to the basket. Now he's going to be 37 years old, so there's a lot of wear and tear there. But the problem is when you go to the basket and get fouled, now you go to the free throw line and you've got some demons at the free throw line because his free throw percentage, Jet, has been going down every year for the last 4 years. Like, I talked to my. It makes
really,
no
it should
sense.
improve, right? If anything,
Absolutely.
It should
I
improve
mean,
a little bit.
he's a good shooter. He's not a great shooter. He's not Kevin Durant. He's not Steph Curry. We get all that. He's better than them as players. But he's not a great shooter, but he's certainly good enough to be at least a 75% free throw shooter. Magic Johnson, who had
I don't think that's asking a lot. I really don't.
No, of course it's not for a player of that caliber. He should do that in his sleep. I mean, Jordan was 84, 85%. Kobe was 84, 85%. Magic Johnson had the ugliest looking shot you'll ever see. He hit 85% of his free throws somehow. So LeBron should be there. And again, now that he's not there, he's hesitant to go to the basket and get fouled. Now, if that starts to seep into Anthony Davis, who's an 80% free throw shooter, now your two best players don't want to go to the free throw line. They're going to not only miss free throws when they go there, but now it changes their game. They stretch the defense. They move their offense even more farther out because now they don't want to go near the basket and get fouled. That's not good. And then you got Westbrook, who sucks at the free throw line, and so does Rondo. I mean, and Dwight Howard. I mean, they got a bunch of guys that can't shoot free throws.
Yes,
in fact, it got so bad that Carmelo Anthony forgot to shoot a free throw the other night. Like
for the past 5 years. For the past 5 years, LeBron shot under 70% from the free throw line.
No, that's terrible. I don't know what causes this. I mean, is he not working on it? I think he overthinks everything anyway. I've always felt that when LeBron just goes out and plays, that's when he's unstoppable. When he overanalyzes things, I think that's when he gets in trouble. I used to say that about Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning sometimes would get to the line of scrimmage and overthink the situation. I think Aaron Rodgers does that sometimes. I think whereas Tom Brady just kind of locks in and says, okay, here's the next play. Let me move on. But then again, Tom Brady's a sociopath and a cyborg. So maybe that's
Right.
what those type of people do. Whereas, LeBron isn't quite cut out that way. So I think that's part of the reason. But there's no way in hell that he should shoot less than 75%. It should be at 80%. He's
No,
certainly
but
good
he's
enough to
shooting
do that.
less than 70, right now. So
It's terrible. That's horrible. Absolutely. No, and look, my favorite player of all time. I think he's the greatest player of all time, but I will criticize him when needed.
yeah. So we'll see. I agree with you. I think the Lakers are going to be a slow starting team. I don't think it's going to matter really in the end. Similar to, I think we talked about the SAP in the postseason last year. Typically, LeBron doesn't have great game ones in series.
No, not even in series, right? Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to extrapolate that to the Lakers season and say, in a bigger fashion, they don't start that fast. So, you know what? Who didn't also start fast cross sport comparison? Patriots didn't always start really fast.
Yep.
Tom Brady.
Not in the season, not in the Super Bowls yet. Brady and Belichick played in 9 Super Bowls together. They never scored a first quarter touchdown in 9 games. Finally,
it's an analytical approach, right? Like it's sort of
we're going to suck in the first quarter. It's almost like take your glasses off, right? And then when you put them back on, you see better. Like you focus better after taking them off. It's almost like we're not going to show too much in the first game. It's 82 game schedule. Like so,
I'd say the closest thing is like boxing, right? Where the first couple rounds you're sort of feeling each other out.
Process, yeah. And LeBron, look, LeBron's biggest weapon is his brain, right? Especially now that he's approaching 37. I think he just wants to kind of feel things out and see, okay, I got to integrate Russell Westbrook. I got to get Howard and Rondo and all these other guys involved and how that's going to work. So, and look, he's coaching the team. We know that. We know he's the general manager. I kind of wish he didn't bring in Russell Westbrook and brought Buddy Hield in instead, because he would have been a perfect fit on that team.
Agree.
But, it was a sexy move to bring in Westbrook, and I think they're good friends. And, maybe he's trying to win a championship for Westbrook. I also think that if he ever wins a championship with Westbrook, he can kind of turn around and say, hey, look, James Harden and Kevin Durant couldn't get this guy a championship.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's
a legacy moment. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like if pick a guy, Carmelo's the other guy on the team that can't get out of his own way in the post. I mean, he's had good postseason moments, but he's never made it to the finals. At least Westbrook did go to the finals. Like LeBron's like, I'll get Westbrook and Carmelo rings late in their career. Like, how good am I?
Yeah. I think if the Lakers are past the All-Star break and still struggling, okay, maybe time to worry. But as far as right now, I don't think there's a huge reason for anybody to panic. I think they're going to start slow. It makes sense. It totally makes sense. All right, Sap. The other game that we saw on opening night was the Bucks and Nets. Giannis picked up right where he left off. He looked like the best player on the court, and and Kevin Durant and James Harden were on the court. And so, I mean, I don't know that there's much more to say beyond he's phenomenal and is one of the most easy guys to root for. But I mean, the Bucks certainly you have them winning the East. They certainly looked every bit of the favorite in the East on opening night.
Yeah, I mean, he's so easy to root for. I mean, just the look on his face when he won the champion, when they handed him the championship ring, it's almost like now I'm a made man. There's a lot of great players in the history of the sport that never won a championship. Elgin Baylor, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, current guys that are all-time great players like Harden and Westbrook and Chris Paul haven't won a championship. Giannis has his championship, and he just kind of looked at it, and he must have just looked at it and said, man, 9 years ago, where I was to where I am right now, this is incredible. And I think that's why
his story is crazy.
His story is insane. I mean, it really is. So I think he's so thankful of it because he didn't come through AAU like the rest of the guys. Like the rest of the great players in the league, like Durant and LeBron, and they're supposed to be here. This guy's not supposed to be here. And here he is. And I've said it, he is the best player in the league right now until someone takes that title away from him. Because first of all, those other great players that we talk about don't have the impact on the defensive end that he has, right? And that's a big, big part of it. Have you ever seen a guy who puts up like 34 and 13 and 7 so effortlessly? Like he's just out there and he just does it.
The numbers are effortless, but like the effort on the court is awesome. I mean, really. And I saw Shaq was talking about this. Shaq and Barkley were talking about this after the game. Like, of course his team's going to play hard because he plays his ass off.
Yes.
Every possession, he plays his ass off. And
Who
you
did
know
I compare him to
the
last year? Who did I compare him to last year in the playoffs? He's a giant Russell Westbrook, except right now, he's even more skilled, but that type of athletic ability and that type of motor.
I do
And
think he
his
plays
teammates
within
expect that.
himself a little bit more too than
Oh,
Westbrook.
well, everybody does, because Westbrook's
Yeah,
just,
that's maybe not much of a
well,
bold
yeah,
statement.
anybody does. I mean, I watch games with more restraint than Russell Westbrook plays basketball, which I guess that's endearing that Westbrook plays like that, because that's
I love
my
it. I
favorite
mean,
player.
I
But
love
I
it.
don't. I like efficiency, and I watch the Lakers and I see Westbrook out there and Rondo, and I see Dwight Howard and I see Carmelo Anthony. I'm like, this team has no efficiency. It's
Yeah.
just like a lot of, what the Lakers feel like, and I know we'll move on to the Bucks and Nets and the Celtics Knicks games, which were, Celtics Knicks game was the best game of the year already. I know it's only 2 days into the season, but that was
Right.
incredible. But the Lakers, now I'm really old. I'm 58 years old. I'm like 25 years older than you, maybe 26 years older than you. But here's the thing. In the 70s, they used to have all these movies come out, like the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno. They were these big disaster movies. And I'm not saying the Lakers are going to be a disaster, but they had all sorts of actors and actresses in these movies. Like Ernest Borgnine, who was an Oscar winner, was like ninth on the marquee. Like they just
Yeah.
bring in all these huge name actors, throw them in. The movie poster was exciting, and the movie sucked. Right. So that's my biggest fear with the Lakers is like, look at this guy, Russell Westbrook. Look at Carmelo Anthony. They've got Dwight Howard. They got Rajon Rondo, not to mention Anthony Davis, LeBron James. How's it going to work? Because you got 14 legitimate NBA players. How do you divvy the minutes up? How do you
The
even know
difference
what to
I'd
do?
say it's like if
How do
one
you
of those movies had like, a great director, Stanley Kubrick or Steven Spielberg, it'd probably be a
Martin
good movie.
Scorsese, right?
And you got LeBron James as that director role. So that's why I feel like I
Right.
get what you're saying, but I feel
Yeah.
like it'll be okay. Maybe I'm overconfident in LeBron, but I think it'll work itself out because he's there.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, of course. He's the star and he's the director. So he's, Kevin Costner and Dances with Wolves or, whatever. I mean,
Right.
he's the star. I mean, a movie that we both don't like that much because it beat out Goodfellas for Best Picture in 1990.
Crazy.
So I don't know how that
Ridiculous.
happened, but it did happen. But yeah, I mean, that's my biggest fear of the Lakers is like everyone's going, holy crap, look at this team, and it just doesn't work out. I think it's going to work out because again, I trust LeBron to make this all work because he in the past has made it happen.
All right, Sap, moving on to last night's games before we wrap up. Obviously, like you said, the Celtics and Knicks was a wild double overtime game that was a lot of fun. The Celtics break my heart and lose 138 to 134. Not because of Jaylen Brown, though, who you could make a case if the season ended today would be the MVP of the league. He had
leading scorer, yes.
Career high 46 points to go with 9 rebounds and 6 assists. I did not believe that he had COVID. It seems like he is perfectly fine. It seemed like Jason Tatum had COVID again because he was horrible, just terrible. But the Celtics do lose a double overtime game that was very frustrating. I thought Ime Udoka showed a little bit of rookie coaching nerves, some timeouts that he could have taken. He didn't, but you can't make any, declarations this early into his coaching tenure. Evan Fournier decided to torture the Celtics. That was brutal to see him and Jason Tatum body swap. But yeah, it was an exciting game. Sap, other things that stood out to me on opening night, Sap, and before you say, what stood out to you, I thought LaMelo Ball was, just freakishly phenomenal. Brought the team back from down 20 points to win by a point. 31, 9, and 7 for LaMelo Ball. He looks like he is going to make an all-star team this year, which would be pretty awesome for the Hornets, who rarely, if ever, have an all-star player. Other guys that I thought were impressive. We mentioned Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. You talked about them already.
John
reigning
Morant.
MVP. John Morant was phenomenal.
John Morant was phenomenal. Yeah.
Nikola Jokic, the reigning MVP, looked good. Your worries about the Phoenix Suns maybe proved true on opening night. They did not play well against the Nuggets. Maybe a drop off this season. Anything else stand out to you, Sap?
Yeah, but in terms of Phoenix and my concerns with them, they remind me a little bit, and they have over the years, of being the Atlanta Falcons of the NBA. And we remember how Atlanta has been since they lost the 28-3 lead in the third quarter against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Like, they've been nothing. So I'm just worried about the hangover that Phoenix is going to be dealing with this year. They seem to be screwing up the contract negotiations with DeAndre Ayton, who's their franchise center. So yeah, I think they'll be good. You still have Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. You've got a good coach and a good squad there. So they'll still be a playoff team, but I don't think they get too far in the postseason. As far as that Celtics game that, was just kind of crazy. Jason Tatum was 7 of 30 from the floor. Have we ever
And
seen?
he only took
I'm
five
sure.
free throws, Sap. Only took 5 free throws, which is a killer.
That's a killer. He's got to get to the basket. At least when he goes to the basket and gets fouled, he's an 80% free throw shooter. It's like he's unstoppable going to the basket. The guy is 6'10", right? Or
And he
maybe
put on
7
weight this summer, muscle specifically to do that. I don't know if your shot's not falling, drive to the freaking basket.
Yeah, he's a 230 pounds, maybe. He's not small. He's not Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's probably 210 at most. Like Kevin Durant and Chris Sale. Yeah, Chris Sale and Kevin Durant have like the same bodies. I mean, Jason Tatum's put together. I mean, he's a strong looking dude. And get to the basket because you're going to hit 80% of your free throws. He takes 5 free throws. Like years ago, we'd see a stat line like that, like 7 for 30, because shooting percentages were lower in the old days of the NBA because the game was played at a really fast pace. But 7 for 30, like, I guess it's a good sign that Tatum has no memory because he's like shooting like shit and he's still throwing up shots, which I guess is a good thing. I'm sure Kobe Bryant up in heaven was looking down on one of his proteges.
Yeah, he was loving it. Yep.
God bless you. Just keep firing up, my man. And I'm sure Michael Jordan was saying the same things. But there comes a point where like Jaylen Brown also had 30 shots. Like, get other people involved. I'm not worried. It's one game. But, you know, I do want to bring this up to you because you're the Celtics guy.
Yeah.
We're seeing players leave the Celtics, and I know it's one game with Evan Fournier, so I don't want to get too crazy here. He looked really good last night, like better than he ever looked with the Celtics, right? Gordon Hayward's playing really well in Charlotte. I think he had 27 last night in that comeback win. You know, Terry Rozier's gone to Charlotte and played really well and has averaged essentially 20 points per game the last few years. Is there something wrong with the Celtics? Like, guys are leaving the Celtics and playing really well elsewhere. I mean, no, I'm just saying, does it have to do with Brad Stevens when he was coaching? Does it have to do with Danny Ainge was the GM? I'm not blaming, you know, Ime Udoka. He's coached one game. I'm not putting him into this discussion. Are people like leaving the Celtics and playing better because there's something wrong with the Celtics? Is it Tatum, Brown, and Smart that these guys are like, let me get the hell out of there because I can't deal with these kids and you know, they play better elsewhere? Just a conspiracy theory.
No, it's a great thought, and you know we're running out of time on the Zoom, so I'd say it's a good thought for another episode.
Yeah, we'll bring it up.
But we'll bring it up. But I it's a good question. It's not something that I feel good about. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
I don't love seeing Evan Fournier put a career high on the Celtics in Game 1 of the season.
Yeah,
that's
looking like Klay Thompson.
Thing.
Yeah, like he like, you know, morphed into Klay Thompson last night, which was kind of crazy.
All right. Well, that's going to do it, though, for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out the show and our socials at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer, and find us wherever podcasts are found. And we will talk to you more. Lots of NBA stuff to get to.